Hey, how's it going, ninjas? Have you ever wondered how to sync multiple cameras with multiple sources of external audio in any editing program? Well, this video is for you. The software that I use is PluralEyes. PluralEyes is basically a software that lets you take many different cameras, could be up to 10 cameras from what I've done, and many different sources of external audio. I've done up to 10 sources of external audio as well, and be able to sync them all, even though they were recorded on different cameras and there was no slate or anything like that to be able to sync them manually. This is basically an automatic way of syncing using the audio recorded on each camera. One of the most important things to be able to do this is that you do record audio on each camera. If you have a camera that does not have any audio, basically you're not going to be able to do this. It's using the audio waves and matching them up, finding exactly where certain pieces of audio were played at the exact same time, and using that to sync the different sources of audio and video. So I'm going to go over how exactly to do that, going from Final Cut into PluralEyes, syncing everything, and then bringing it back into Final Cut. So one of the most important thing is making sure that you have your timeline prepped for PluralEyes. So basically, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a new timeline. So in my timelines, I'm going to go to File, New, Project. That's basically what I call a timeline. And then we're going to call this Ninja Video School number 4, and this is syncing. And we're just gonna basically make this 4K, and that's pretty much all I'm gonna change there. I'm gonna press enter to OK it. So now I have a blank sequence right here that it created for me. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the files that I had organized, so my organized clips, and I have everything. We're going to start with the ceremony. Basically, I'm going to teach you how to sync the ceremony. The sequence, it's going to be the same process for syncing the reception. So once you know how to sync the ceremony, you'll be able to sync the reception. So the first thing we're going to do, I have a folder in here that I made for the ceremony sync. These are 2 different cameras. Basically, the way that I know it is from the file name. You see how this one starts with 1000. And then this one goes to 1440. So I know that these are 2 different cameras. This is basically my manned camera during the ceremony. And this is the wide shot during the ceremony. So I'm going to basically start with the wide shot. I always like having the wide shot on the bottom. I think that's always a good idea because you're cutting away, then you have the wide shot on the bottom. It really doesn't matter as much when you're doing multicam, but it's just a technique that I've always grown to. So basically what I'll do is I like to move it a little bit after the beginning, but that really doesn't matter. You can start right from the beginning. And I'll press W to insert all of those clips into the timeline. So now all these clips are inserted into the timeline. I press Shift Z to be able to zoom out. So if you're zoomed in really far and you want to just zoom out and see the whole timeline, Shift Z will take care of that for you. So now this is one camera. Usually I'll move it over a little bit to do the second camera. Select all of the cameras for the second camera. And for this, instead of pressing W to insert, I'm going to press Q to connect. That'll basically put everything above, on a different track or roll above. So I've done that. So one of the things that PluralEyes suggests to be able to make sure that everything syncs correctly once you get it into PluralEyes is to group all of the clips. It's a pretty easy process. Basically, all you have to do is press Command G, or you could right click and create storyline. It used to be called group, now it's called create storyline. It's a little bit different, but it's the same thing at the end of the day. So now I've created that. These are the 2 cameras that I'm going to be using. So I have audio, that's going to be in my master clips. I have the audio. So these are all the audio sources that I have for the ceremony and for the reception. So these sources, this is my ceremony backup, my ceremony feed, groom, and officiant. I place all of these basically on different tracks. You could just drag them in, or you could press Q. So I will just basically keep pressing Q, Shift Z to be able to zoom it back out, Q again, go back here, Q again. I like to stack them like that. It's just something I like to do just to keep it organized here. So basically that's all you have to do. This is prepped and ready for PluralEyes, ready for syncing. Now what I want to do is go into File, and I'm gonna go and export an XML. So we're gonna put it, I'm just gonna put it on my desktop for purposes of this video. And I'll just call it Ninja Monkey Syncing. Sometimes I might put PluralEyes at the end, just in case I'm searching for it later. I'll know every XML that I made for PluralEyes. Another thing that is important, you can't use the current version of XML for PluralEyes. For some reason that won't work. You want to use the previous version, which is 1.6. So we're going to save that. Give it a second to save. So now once we're saved, we'll open up PluralEyes. So the way I do this is Command space. That lets me open up any program. I'll just type in what I'm opening. So I'll press enter to open that up. Alright, now that we're inside of PluralEyes, the first thing that we have to do is go to File, New Project from Final Cut X. This also works with all the major editing programs besides Resolve, Premiere, Media Composer, and also Final Cut 7. But we're using Final Cut Pro X right here, so we'll click right here, New Project. And I had saved it to the desktop, so we'll just look for that right here. It's Ninja Monkey right here, PluralEyes, and we're going to open that. And now when it opens, it starts doing a process, basically looking through all the waveforms and kind of finding everything, looking through all the audio. That's basically how it's syncing, like I had said before. It's going through all the audio on the cameras and the audio recorders. In this case, I have 4 audio recorders. Alright, so once we're inside of PluralEyes and everything is imported, basically we have to sync. So you could just basically press synchronize and it'll go right away, but I usually like to look at my settings. There's 3 main settings that you have: allow to sync and change clip order. That's basically if the clips are out of order, it lets you help you out a little bit. Allow it to sync if the clips are in different order. Or you could try really hard. Right now, as default, it just has level audio. I usually like to just try that. So we'll just press synchronize. Now it has to go and prepare all the media, like you can see here on the bottom right. It's about halfway through, so we'll just skip ahead to when it's ready. So during this process, what it's doing is it's going through each audio file and leveling each audio file and then analyzing bit by bit, wave by wave, exactly what is going on in each of these audio files. Later, it's going to take that information and match it up with the other audio files to find the syncing point. Let's give it another couple of minutes, usually for a ceremony edit, which for this ceremony, I believe it was about a half an hour. So it's about a half an hour of video footage, like you can see, 22 minutes. And I usually run the audio recorders a little bit longer. So this is gonna basically take about 5 to 10 minutes to be able to prepare all of the audio and get it ready for syncing. Alright, now that the audio files are finishing up, you can kind of see what it's doing. It's analyzing each of the clips and then it creates these waveforms. So it's analyzing each of the clips to find the waveforms, and it'll match up all of these waveforms without me having to do any type of slate. And as you can see, the cameras may have been turned off and on again. Sometimes I'll turn the camera off in the middle of the ceremony to check my focus while another camera's running, make sure that that focus is perfect, and then turn it back on. I don't have to slate or anything when I'm doing things like that. So now it's doing the last clip, it's analyzing that waveform, and now it'll start the synchronizing process. You can see that it's moving around all the clips. It moved it around pretty fast, and now everything's perfectly synchronized. All of these clips are now aligned with the audio files. These are 2 different cameras, and these are 4 different sources of audio, and they're all aligned perfectly. So basically, we're good to go. We're done with PluralEyes. What I like to do is I basically like to save the PluralEyes project so that I have this for later use. We'll just save it right here to our desktop for now, but I do like to save it inside of the weddings folder in a separate folder called editing, and then another folder called syncing, so that I have all my syncing files separate from everything else of editing. We'll just save it on the desktop for now. So now we have the actual project saved, so we have to export it. So I usually like to go So now that we have the project saved, we have to export it so that we can use it in Final Cut Pro. So we'll go right here to Export Timeline. and it's for Final Cut X, and I like to create multicam clips. This is your decision, but in the next couple lessons we'll go over multicam editing. So it's going to help you to have the multicam clips ready, but you also have an XML without multicam just in case. So we'll just export that. And right here, usually I like to just show in Finder so I know exactly where it is. And it's going to be right there in the folder we created on the desktop. And both of our XMLs that we're going to need on Final Cut are right here. The one that's a multicam is just labeled multicam right there at the end. So it's going to be pretty easy to find. So let's go into Final Cut again. And now in timelines, I created a timelines keyword collection inside of organized clips. I'll go to File, and I'll import an XML. And now I'll go into that folder we made, and I'm going to import the multicam clip. It'll take just a couple seconds to import that in. And now we'll just let this beach ball disappear, right? Now, sometimes it doesn't actually have it inside of your keyword collection after you've imported it. What I like to do is just click on the initial project. You'll have it right there on the top. Not having an arrow here signifies it's not inside of any keyword collection. Now we've placed it. It does have an arrow. So we have it right here in our timeline. Now we can double click it. We open it up. Everything's synced. If we were to play it, all the audio's synced. Everything's synced together. And that's several sources of audio, and they're all playing at the same time. Now what we'll do, basically, in the next session, in the next class, what we're going to go over is how to organize this timeline, organize the audio, make sure you have everything ready to go, and then multicam edit. Be able to edit all of these on the fly using the 1, 2, and 3, and 4 keys, depending on how many cameras you have. In this case, only 2 cameras, so it's just 1 and 2. And I would use the multicam editor, which is right here in View. And you'd go to the multicam editor, which is right here in View, and you'd go right to Angles, and you can see both angles. And you would click between them on the fly and edit like that. You could just clean this up a little bit, have a little bit more space to see everything that's going on, but you could see that everything is synced perfectly. They're at the same moment, everything is happening together. Now it just has to be worked on a little bit to make sure that the audio is working correctly. Right now it's just playing all the sources of audio. We want to make sure that it's optimized so that we're hearing the groom when the groom's talking, we're hearing the officiant when the officiant's talking, and we can hear the bride when she's talking. We hear the music when it's playing, and then everything's leveled in a professional way. So next week's lesson is going to go over how to do all of that. And if you have any questions about what I went over today, just ask it right in the comments. I'm always here for anybody. Thank you so much. Have a great week.